Responsible sourcing is the new name of the game in mining, and it speaks to the industry's growing need to ensure transparency in the supply chain. For more, we are joined by Inga. Inga, thank you so much for your time. So let's get some updates here since the launch of the battery passport last year.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So for us, launching the world's first battery passport proof of concept was a real milestone. Truly pioneering work to try to apply a concept of a digital product passport to a value chain as complex as batteries and really combine the traceability information and the provenance data with consistent reporting against sustainability so that we can have a differentiated picture of how that battery performs. And it's been an invaluable learning experience for us, and I think lots of the participants of the pilot as well. So we've really spent this year, or actually last year, sorry, we're in February, taking stock of how that will inform our priorities going forward. How do we strike the right balance between consistently raising the level of ambition when it comes to sustainability performance for batteries, but also having a pragmatic solution that is implementable. So we've gone through a whole exercise to define this ecosystem better and how we see the GBA's role within it, because there's still much uncertainty in terms of the exact content of some of the provisions that are coming from the EU battery regulation, which drives a lot of the dynamics related to the battery passport. But at the same time, moving forward in implementing it and starting work on new issues. So defining performance expectations for issues like forced labor and circular design for batteries, for example.
What's your view on bringing automotive companies to the Mining Indaba?
I think it's an excellent idea. It very much mirrors our approach. So the GBA brings together the entire end-to-end value chain from mining companies through cell manufacturers, OEMs to the end of life, and they're obviously a critical constituent. If you're looking at regulations like the EU battery regulations, they're being predominantly driven by the downstream, by importing countries. So closing that loop is essential. And they are an essential part of that conversation.
What's the focus for the GBA in 2024?
So we're really looking at, of course, what is the guidance that is coming out of the EU battery regulation, but the framework that the Global Battery Alliance is trying to develop is really taking a global lens. If we have emerging battery passport requirements in other regions, how can we use this framework to help companies meet compliance obligations in certain jurisdictions, but also integrate the existing voluntary standards landscape and help define a scale of ambition where companies can differentiate themselves on how far are they really going in their efforts to address and mitigate sustainability risks and impacts, and in that way create a more level playing field for products to compete on those metrics as opposed to price alone or manufacturing history alone.
What type of disruption do you think is needed in the mining industry?
So for mining and for producing countries, I'm going to speak to both categories. Right now, all of these performance expectations and due diligence requirements are being driven by the downstream. And I think there is room to much more prominently bring in the views of the upstream in terms of what is feasible and what is desirable and what creates value locally. And I think this is one of the areas, where there's a bit of an imbalance in terms of how are these trends actually being driven and how do we bring in, the upstream perspectives more prominently, both from a governmental perspective as well as, from the private sector.
Inga, thank you so much for your time. For more insights, you can go to MITV, which is on the Mining Indaba website.